My name is Melissa Gardner. I met Quincy several years ago. I was actually at home, and a friend of mine was in another city, not too far from us. And she actually brought Quincy back to my house. We met, we ended up having conversation that night. It was Mother's Day, I'll never forget it. But we met that night, and it was just, we was inseparable from that night forward. From that night on, we stayed together.
What was the first thing that you noticed about Quincy that you liked?
His sense of humor. The first thing I noticed about him, he is the funniest person you ever want to meet. He kept me laughing. I was in a dark place at that time to where, I was trying to find myself. So he helped me laugh and find joy in life. And that was the first thing I noticed about him, that he liked to have fun. He enjoyed life. So that's what he brought to me.
And that's what drew you to want to get romantically involved with him?
Yes, that, and he's a very intimate person. He's a very intimate person with words. For me, Quincy has a great conversation. So we would talk a lot. What made me want to get more romantically involved was he would want to understand me versus just trying to get me in bed. So it wasn't about a sexual thing. Like I said, we had conversation for hours at a time, to where we would just sit and talk, and he would try to get to know me before anything else. So that's what made me want to get romantically involved with Quincy.
How would you describe Quincy to somebody that's never met him but has read what's been printed in the papers about him?
Quincy's very loving. He's understanding. He's compassionate. He's selfless. He's going to see about your needs before his own to begin with at any time. He cares about what's going on with you. He's a great dad. He never one time thought about himself versus what I needed first. So for me, what I would want people to know about Quincy is that he's one in a million. There'll never be another him. There'll never be another like him, but he's just amazing. But he has the biggest heart ever. He loved me before I even loved myself. So, he's a very loving person.
Were you in love with Quincy?
Yes, very much so.
Could you say I was in love with him?
I was very much in love with Quincy.
Was Quincy ever? Were there ever any instances of abuse, whether that be mental, physical, emotional, in the household when you two were dating?
In my relationship with Quincy, there was never any abuse. Quincy and I never hardly argued. And anytime we had a disagreement, we would always talk about it. We never went to bed angry. So there was no abuse in our relationship.
Were you two together in the year 2000?
No, I didn't know Quincy in the year 2000. I hadn't met Quincy.
Can you talk about once when you were laying in bed next to him and saw the deal pop up on TV?
I'll talk about that. It first started though, and the one thing I also loved about Quincy was in the beginning of our relationship, he was totally honest about what was going on with Kentucky, and that they were trying to pin this murder on him. And he was telling me in the beginning that he didn't do it. So, that in itself comforted me in order to be able to have the relationship. But the night we were laying in the bed and it aired on the Channel 6 News, was probably the worst time of my life. At 45 years, I've never been so scared. And I was scared because they did say consider him armed and dangerous. And, the fear on his face when he looked at me and told me, Face, I believe if I don't turn myself in, I won't make it to jail. Just instilled a bigger fear in me that night.
Do you remember the moment that he was charged? Do you remember the moment he was arrested and charged with the murder of Jessica Kern?
I do remember the moment he was arrested and charged with the murder of Jessica Kern. The day he was charged was unbelievable. because it was like everything that he had told me had just come true. And never in a million years with the man that I had dated and laid next to, I ever foresaw this happening. So the day he was charged with the murder, I was devastated. I spiraled downhill after that. I went into a state of depression. It was unbelievable.
Can you talk about Quincy's relation to your kid or kids, you know, with the last name, and how he was with them and how they feel about him even years later?
Quincy's relationship with, and I don't say my two children, to this day they're our two children. I have two boys. They're 24 and the youngest one is getting ready to be 21. He was a great dad. From the day he came into the relationship, he stepped in to be a father. Quincy did homework. Quincy put him in bed. I went to work. He was at the house. He put him in bed at night. He made sure the homework was done. He made sure they were fed. He did everything a dad would do. He got out there. They played football. He played football with the kids. You know, they turned backflips. To this day, my youngest is still wanting to learn to turn backflips. His thing is, you know, they took him away from me before I was able to learn to turn a backflip. So to this day, they still know him as dad, and he'll always be dad.
So they're aware of everything that he's gone through, and
yes, they're very aware. At a young age, I had to sit them down and kind of try to explain to them what was happening. As they got older, they began to understand, you know, what he had went through and the charges that he had. They still to this day don't understand why it had to be him, because to them, that's not who he is. To them, he's dad. So, you know, they can't see him being the person that they say that he is.
Was there any point in time that you thought that Quincy might be responsible for the murder of Jessica Curran?
I never thought Quincy might be responsible for the murder of Jessica Curran. He's not that person. I never could have imagined that. Vaguely because of the man that I know that he is. He's not that person. The relationship that I have with Quincy to this day is he will forever be my friend. He'll forever be the father of my children. I can never take any of that away from him. What I want the public to know is that Quincy is one person that will love hard. It takes a lot to get to the interior of Quincy, but when you do, he has a love that's beyond no other. I could never love anyone the way I love Quincy because he is so unique. Quincy brought something to me that no one ever could. I've always felt like I've been neglected and abandoned all my life. And with Quincy, he just has this love about him and this technique that makes you love yourself, because he cares more about you first than he even cares about him own self. So, you know, for me, what I want the world to know is before you pass judgment on who he is, get to know him first, because they made him out to be somebody he's not. And if you ever get to know him, you can't help but to love him. I'll love him until I leave here. That's nothing I can change, because he is such a phenomenal person and he is so unique. I said it before, they'll never make another Quincy Cross. And I thank God for that. I really do, because he truly broke the mold when he made him. And I thank God for the opportunity of just him choosing me when he did, because he made my life phenomenal. So I just want the world to know that he's outstanding, and I wouldn't trade what I have for him with the world.